Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another episode of 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490, brought to you by the Cleveland Observer, the voice of the community here in Cleveland. Also, want to let you know that our show today is brought to you by the Ohio Black Expo, and you can go to ohioblackexpo.com to get more information about that festival that's going to take place on the 23rd or the 24th of May, Memorial Day weekend. You want to make
Mhm.
sure you get down there because I'm telling you, it is going to be off the chain. Got a few announcements for you, but first, we're going to holler at our brother, Antonio, creator and founder of 360 Info Network.
And greetings, everyone. Got a great show for you today. I know everyone is waiting for that weather to change and be consistent. We got some decent days coming up, but then we drop right back down a little bit. So usually, when I'm this usually the time that I be doing my parade. So we usually don't get no stable weather until about that last week of May going into June. So let's just hold tight, hold in, and I'm looking forward to it and give us black folks some of that good radiant sun energy, raw, and get us out there in nature so we can deal with nature. So we got a great show for you today. We're gonna talk about one of our favorite subjects. One of my favorite subjects is connecting us back to the motherland, and we got the one and only that brother Vince will introduce to you very shortly. That he was here with us now with boots on the ground to talk about this connection, especially in light of what's going on in this country. We can't talk more than enough about it, getting the message out about why we need to make that connection. So I don't have no problem. Keep talking about it and talking until we get it into our heads. That's how critical this situation is.
Yeah, no doubt. We definitely have to continue to bring the message because folks can be sleeping on reality
Yes.
with the
Mhm.
distractions that are out there. So, yes,
Mhm.
indeed. Just a couple of announcements before we start the show today. I want to let everybody know about an exhibition that is taking place at the Brown Hoist today. It is called, if I can bring this up real quickly on my phone, it is Anchoring to the Community. It's an art exhibition, and it's going to be on view from May 4th through the 29th. So you can get down there today from 6 to 10 p.m., and you can take part in that event. I will have a piece in that, and there are other artists in Cleveland that have been invited to do that. Also, want to let you know that enrollment for the Creative Impact Fund through the Assembly for the Arts has started. It's a grant program that is offering a $10,000 grant to individual artists. These grants are for anyone to apply. It is a juried type of grant program, and they are going to give out 22 $10,000 grants. So you can go to assemblycle.org, click on programs, look up the Creative Impact Fund, and there you will be able to apply for that particular grant. In terms of Larchmere Arts, we're going to be doing poetry and percussion on the 29th of this month, and we are going to welcome Gloria Cummings Jones, and she'll be doing the first concert of June. So on that first Friday in June, we will welcome Gloria Cummings Jones and her magnificent trio of Ed Ridley, Elijah Gilmore, and Bradford McGee. With that, we're ready to start the show, and welcome to our conversation, Nana Kra Kwamina II, known to some of you as Dr. Quad David Whitaker. He has a magnificent school in the municipal school district, the Cleveland Municipal School District. It is called Wings Academy. And if you don't know about it, you should know about it because we are raising young people to know who they are and what they are supposed to be doing. We're going to talk more about that. But until then, let's welcome Nana Kra Kwamina II. Welcome to 360 Info Network, brother.
Madasi, good morning, good morning. I'm happy to be here, and let's get it on.
All right. All right. Well,
Okay.
Brother Antonio has some things that he wants to get off his chest today and things that are happening in the world that we need to talk
Mm.
about. And I don't know about you who are listening on the radio, but if you are watching us on YouTube, and you can
Mhm.
check us out on YouTube, you can check us out on the 360 Info Network Facebook page. He's got the Ibrahim Traore look. So y'all watch out because it's coming right now.
Yeah, absolutely. In honor of our good dear brother, I said I'm gonna start sporting these berets around and stir up some fire, at least some interest, and so people to know exactly what's going on the continent. And you'll be surprised too that I was surprised when I was over in Ghana. Most of them, some of them know about Abraham, but they don't know about Gaota or Achi, the other brother in Niger and Mali, those particular presidents. So I had to school a couple brothers and sisters from Africa about what was going on up in Mali, with those particular presidents as well. So again, that just shows and proves that, all of us need to be educated on what's going on. And it also shows to me that as far as the African people on the continent today, while they're still catching up, with understanding their history and what it was about and what was going on in the past and our connection to them. So, across both sides of the water, we need to educate ourselves on what's going on. So, we're starting off. What's been frustrating me, Doctor, lately in the last, you could almost say year or two is, and especially recently with all the things going on in this country about the change, the setback. Some people say Jim Crow look like returning. I predicted that, a year or so ago that this country might end up being the North and the South again, and black folks was going to have traveling papers when they go down to the North and things of that nature. And it seems like some of those things are coming to fruition. And so me being and all of us being the town crier about what's going on, where should we be at? And I don't feel the urgency of understanding that we are under attack. So your thoughts with that verbiage and that psychosis of not acting like a people who's been under attack. Some of us might say, okay, yeah, they doing this, but we're not responding like a people under attack. So since your background is in human behavior and understanding some of the things that get people caught up mentally and into certain type of characteristical behaviors, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, thank you, Antonio. I would like to suggest that psychologically, in terms of the weather, the geopolitical weather is very hot and sticky and uncomfortable.
Okay.
Uh, the physical weather here has not reached the typical summer feelings, but around the planet, things are very hot and uncomfortable. And the projections can be very, very chilling when you actually hear them. So we were told growing up, I'm the senior member of the three of us, but you were told the same thing during our quote unquote revolutionary days of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. We were always told to think globally and act locally.
Mm-hmm.
We were always admonished to know what's going on everywhere so you'll know what you should do anywhere you are. So in the world right now, unless people have been totally uninformed or unable to get any information from their devices that they carry every day, we know that there's at least 3 wars going on that the United States is involved in directly or indirectly. Ukraine and Russia, Israel and Palestine, and Israel, the US, and Iran. So this war effort is demonstrating that the United States is not the global military power that it was during the time of World War I and World War II. So in many respects, it's becoming apparent that there's a new age of war, new strategies of war that the U.S. is not really the master of. So some people are saying that retired generals that are respected, economists that are respected, are saying two things. One, the U.S. is losing the war in Iran. There's almost no one that understands war and military strategies that's not saying that America is on the losing end of this campaign. The fact that America is losing, it's also losing its traditional allies and becoming somewhat of an isolated country, which is not necessarily a bad thing. If you can provide everything you need for yourself, you can afford to be isolated. But unfortunately, America needs almost everything that is required to live because of its previous policies to take advantage of lower prices in terms of its trading partners. It's enjoyed the benefits of the petrodollar, which most people still don't understand or don't seem to understand how it plays into the present dynamics. But the petrodollar was created with the US and Saudi Arabia. I forget exactly who was president at the time. Might have been Nixon.
It was Nixon.
He made an arrangement with Saudi Arabia because the whole world needs oil to operate. Every country needs oil to run a military, fly planes, automobiles, heating elements, and a number of byproducts that are made from oil. So the U.S. during the time of Nixon struck a deal with Saudi Arabia where the U.S. said, we will provide you with military protection if you would sell all of your oil in U.S. dollars. So that agreement was made, which meant that every nation in the world would have to stockpile dollars in order to purchase oil. Saudi Arabia being one of the #1 oil producing nations. So if the whole world is required to hold dollars, that allows the US to print money that it doesn't have because it knows that the world is buying everything in dollars, so the dollar is very attractive and stable. Unfortunately, during the initial phases of Ukraine and Russia encounter, the U.S., even before that, the U.S. asked Saudi Arabia if it would pump more oil because of a shortage at the time. Saudi Arabia declined to pump more oil. The U.S. then threatened that if they weren't able to pump more oil, the U.S. was not able to keep up its part of the bargain to provide Saudi Arabia with military protection. So that one decision signaled to the rest of the world that the United States pledges may not be legitimate. And at the time you might need them most, they won't be there. This is the same time that I gave a presentation in Ghana for Black History Month for 2022. And I asked the audience how many people had heard of BRICS. Only one person had ever heard of BRICS. So I mentioned that BRICS was of a forming confederation between Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, and China. And they were going to challenge the U.S. for global control, to be the #1 entity on the planet. But nobody had ever heard of BRICS. Well, BRICS today has continued to expand. And now the membership of BRICS, I don't know what the total number of countries are, but BRICS has at least 100 nations that are part of that continuing, expanding alliance of countries that have decided not to use the US dollar for their trading amongst themselves. And so this is eroding the financial stability and strength of the US, even though people don't notice it. Then with the outbreak of Ukraine and Russia, which most economists say that war never should have happened. It was an American strategy to force the war into its present campaign as a way of weakening Russia. But the strategy didn't work because BRICS was already in formation and Russia was not crippled by the sanctions that were put on. It just forced them to develop stronger trading relationships with the other countries that they were already forming an alliance with. So it didn't cripple Russia at all. And it encouraged other nations to question whether the US would be a stable ally and partner in the time of need. So to make a long story short, at the present time, the US has, because of poor decisions that most knowledgeable people say that the current administration has made some very poor decisions about how to deal with military conflict. And it has exposed the fact that the United States is not the global power militarily that people have come to think it is. And if it isn't the military power that it once was, what does it have to offer the rest of the world in terms of relationships? And so it appears for most people that the American hegemony is coming to an end. The American dominance is coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, we have a rude awakening coming that will be similar to the decline of Europe and England at the end of World War II, when England was the #1 nation. It had the privilege of being the global economic power. And if we look at England today, it's only a shell of itself at the end of World War II. So the predictions are that we have dynamics in play that will force America to look like a third world nation, especially with this blockade and closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which delivers 20% of the world's oil. And since there's a blockade now, the Iranians control the Strait of Hormuz, and they have not been allowing oil tankers to go through that facilitate the flow of oil around the world. So it's only a matter of maybe 6 weeks before we see astronomical rises in the price of oil and oil byproducts due to inflation and the shortage of supply, not to mention massive food shortages, because this Strait of Hormuz also delivers fertilizer and a lot of other products that are essential for food, home cooking oils, and various byproducts that are very essential to the life that we are accustomed to living in the U.S.
Yes.
So there are predictions on the horizon that are not far off that are suggesting to us that we have to think of dire conditions that most people, A, don't know about, B, are not preparing for, and C, are thinking that, well, just like the movies, America always comes to rescue itself somehow. So they're not paying close attention to what these dynamics are suggesting and how they're unfolding and what they mean. So anytime we can inform our people about what's going on, as Marvin Gaye asked us over and over and over, what's going on. Many of our people have no idea of what's going on, and they're operating based on their fantasies that they've seen in the movies. The cavalry always comes at the last minute, or something always happens to avert the disaster. But there are things happening that our people need to understand, and there's some specific steps that we all believe that we should be taking to get prepared for what appears to be imminent in the minds of people that follow these things much closer than we do. This is all they do. They history, they've seen this take place in other countries and empires before, and so they can see the dynamics, and they're saying that we're in stage 5 of the decline of an empire, which is the final stage where the empire collapses and other nations take the place in the rotation of who's the most powerful. And our people don't seem to be aware of this. So there are some specific things we need to be doing, and I am in total agreement with you that in a way, the silver lining for us, as bad as this is, there's a silver lining that is also very clear to people like myself, you, and many others that can see the silver lining. And that would be, if I could describe it very simply, if the U.S. were a ship that was sinking and we're on it, there comes a point in time where everybody can appreciate the reality that if a ship is sinking, there comes a time where your only option is to get off of that ship. And if you can swim, you're feeling pretty good. But if there's another ship right next to it, you can see what you should do. You should get off of the sinking ship and see if you can get on the ship that's not sinking. And in my mind, as we look at the dynamics that are happening on the continent is beginning to show clear signs of coming together amongst the 54 nations in ways that our scholars have always said that African people on the continent need to come together. And we can see several specific strategies that are in use and working right now to bring the continent together, as opposed to 54 nations, to have various collaborative relationships with their neighboring countries now, which bodes very well for us, because we all know, and the world knows, that the African continent has all of the minerals and resources that are needed to provide for life. And if we were reduced to just food, clothing, and shelter, there'd be no better place to be in the world than on the African continent, if we just provide those 3 things. So we can see that one of our strategies needs to be aligning ourselves with the continent that we came from, at least our ancestors came from, and we would be better off there than we are here if these things play out as they're being described. This would be a ship that we would certainly want to get off of before it sunk. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that little bit of a foundation.
Yeah, if I could, I would like to interject something that you pointed out, and there's an example of that in Nigeria, because there is a very wealthy businessman who established a refinery for oil, which allows Nigeria to be self-sufficient when it comes to that product. And so the World Bank comes in and they says, well, you know, we want you to open up the market to Nigeria, where the standard operating procedure would be to take those products out of the country, refine them somewhere else, and then sell them back to the Nigerians and others. So I think what they're doing in Nigeria is a step in the right direction. And it's probably a chapter that should be taken by the other countries in terms of not allowing their resources to be, you know, taken away, and not having any way to take those resources and make them into the things that are traditionally sold back to them.
Yeah, you talk about Dangote.
Dangote.
I saw him on a program just the other day. He was talking about the pressure that was put on him. The first reaction to the oil refinery was that it was too much of an ambitious project. He wouldn't be able to do it. So as he began to put it together, they then accused him of mismanagement of funds from developing partners. So he had to deal with that. Then once the refinery was pumping oil, he said they're pumping about 600,000 barrels a day now. They wanted him to put the oil on the open market and not use it the way he was planning. So he had to deal with that and all of the allegations of mismanagement and wrongdoing and everything. But he said that what he was doing now is seeking out other areas, places on the African continent to replicate that refinery, so that the regional possibilities of oil distribution that wouldn't require the transportation from Nigeria to everywhere.
I see.
He weathered the storm, and it's a good illustration. It's not new to us. Anything we try to do that looks like will make us self-sufficient, stymied, has been attacked. The leaders have been discredited, imprisoned, or accused of everything to prevent us from being self-sufficient. So you're right. Africa has, and Nigeria will become at 600,000 barrels a day. He was proposing that he could go as high as 650,000 barrels a day. So by comparison, the Strait of Hormuz, they said they send about 20% of the global oil goes through that strait per day, open. So Nigeria become a real powerhouse of supplies for all things. So
yeah, that's interesting.
Things that are happening that in the storms that typically make it appear as though African and African descendants are inept, incompetent, corrupt, or somehow doing things that shouldn't be done. That playbook is always Black Panther Party, Wall Street. It looks like we're guilty of some wrongdoing whenever we attempt to do something that's self-reliant. We're guilty of some crimes if we decide to be self-reliant. So that playbook will not change. We just have to persevere through that. What is done, we have to stay the course until we get what we are trying to achieve.
You know something, Doc, I want to, with that too, just a little footnote on what you said. I've seen some of the titles of them talking about. If people don't know, their Goldie, he's the richest African in in Africa,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and so he got plenty of money to do it, and I heard them talking about, well, you need to open it up to other competitors, you know, to come into your country. Now, ain't this crazy? To come into your country, and so they can sell oil, so you don't have a monopoly on the oil. So I just wanted to throw that in there, but Doc, I'm looking at this thing here, and just what's going on across the scale and global. Like you said, we got to think globally, and then the black folks being spiritual the way they are across the planet. You know, I'm looking at, I'm really, and some of us, you know, our religious Christians and Muslims, so may relate to this as being, to me, divine order of things. You know, everything has a time, everything has a season. You know, this little 200 some years that we, fretting about is just a short period of time when you start talking about history and things like that. But to us living in it, we're like, when we going to get justice? When karma is going to come back and take take up his arms and deal with this situation, because there's so many atrocities that has happened over the last 200 years, 100 years. But I look at this thing as almost like a perfect storm, Doc, about what's going on over here in America. When we talked about the isolations, I talked about that, predicted that a year or so ago. But and 20 years ago, I said that America is going to end up being a working third world country. Let me give you an example about and letting our people know that we might have to get used to all these little abundances that we used to have and prices. You know, just right for right now, I'm looking for some pomegranates. I go in the market, I can't find none. I mean, fresh ones. There's just sitting there. Guess where they come from? Iran. you know, and so we're gonna start experiencing things just like that, higher prices. Only, you know, the folks with little money is gonna be able to afford some of the things. So some of them delicacies and stuff that we were grown accustomed to, we're gonna, have to deal with that. So in conclusion, what I'm saying is that with what's going on in Africa, this awakening that you were talking about, what's going on here? We got the right Manchurian candidate that is in here that is actually doing the work of the isolation and doing crazy stuff, and America's losing its reputation around the world. He's almost literally breaking up the whole NATO situation, that whole block of white power that's been stressed across for the longest, the G7, G20. He's breaking that up. But at the same time, Doc, this is what's interesting to me, is that right at the right time, you got Russia and China kind of like blanketing Africa at this point, giving it a chance to get some legs up under it, and now America's around there putting out so many other fires in other places, and it is giving Africa a chance to get some things together. So I attribute that to divine order of things changing and giving Africa a chance to get itself together to where it cannot be stopped. Your thoughts on that? Oh,
Well, well, everything you're saying is correct, but we also know that we say it all the time, no matter what it is, nothing lasts forever. And America has enjoyed 249 years of its run. Even if you have a great singing group that's number one on the charts, they don't stay number one forever.
mm-hmm.
Someone else becomes number one. Then another person becomes number one. There's a natural rotation, as you're describing. This,
Mm-hmm.
the summer day that we're looking for that would be ideal for a cookout or a parade or a festival. If you get that day, you know that day is not going to be repeated over and over and over. Life just doesn't work like that. So no matter how, there's an African proverb that says, no matter how dark the night, no matter how long the night, the sun was sure to rise.
Mm-hmm.
So even we know bad things don't last forever.
That's right.
Good,
Mm-hmm.
don't last forever. So the key for us as African people is to recognize, which our people used to be able to do very, very well, because we were in touch with our sense of spirituality, and you could read the dynamics in the natural world around you. And people now can even tell in Ghana much better than I can. You can be, the sun can be so hot and people will say to you, but it's going to rain later on today. And I will look up in the sky and I can't imagine how that could be true, because they can look in the sky and see things that I can't see. They just know the feel of it. So even though it's 85 degrees right now, lo and behold, it rains later on in that day. So if we were in touch with our true sense of spirituality, we would know what's happening now. And we wouldn't be worried about it, because it's things that have happened before. We just don't recognize that they've happened before. So people that can predict and project and see what's going on, they can see, well, this is what's going to happen to you. This is what's going to happen. And so if we knew better, we would see what you're talking about. We would see that the time is going to come where the biblical prophecy says that the people that have taken into bondage for 400 years in a land that's not their own are going to eventually come out with great substance. That time has come. The people that don't know that prophecy wouldn't recognize that time. But the people that know that prophecy have been looking for this time and signs for this time to announce its coming. And so for many of us, myself, you, Yao, we're not worried about what's going to happen right now. We've actually been waiting for the signs that would suggest that the time has come. Now, what should we do? We could be wrong, right? So we prepare as if we're right. If we're wrong, so be it. But that's not terrible. What's terrible would be not to prepare and find out that you were right. Now you can't take advantage of what is coming because you're not prepared. So I would say to our people, whether you know what I'm saying right now or not, one thing that you need to have in your possession right now, if you don't have it, you need to get it, is a passport that would allow you to get off of this sinking ship if it starts taking on water and you can see it taking on water and you want to exit. You're going to have certain documents to be able to go someplace else. At the very least, get the documents. There may be moves that are designed to prevent us from leaving here, so that even if you had the document, you couldn't get out of the country. Why? Because maybe there's no jet fuel, so a plane can't fly. Airports are closed. You can't use the normal method to leave the country. Maybe there's no ships going anywhere because ships require oil. You don't have any oil. So maybe you can't leave in that way. Maybe you'd have to go to Canada, where you would need a passport, perhaps, to go there, given the relationship between Canada and the US right now. So at the very least, get a passport for yourself, your children. Tell everybody you know to get a passport, while passports can still be achieved. Maybe there'll come a point in time where they'll say, because of the backlog, the heavy applications, the embassy is closed, so you can't get a passport at all. So the worst thing the worst position to be in is to be stuck in a place that you would like to leave. That's worse than being in a place that has difficulty, but you don't want to leave, so it doesn't really matter to you. adding insult to injury is to see that you would like to leave and you can't leave. So it's simple to be prepared to go if you wanted to go. You won't be stuck.
Yeah. To add to what you're saying, Nana, I think it's important to also think about getting two passports. So get one for the United States and then explore opportunities in other countries to get citizenship in those other countries. And then that way you won't be stuck in America when things really get out of hand.
Well,
We need to step away for just a few moments. We have a couple of spots we need to run, and we're going to be back with more 360 Info Network right after these messages. Don't forget the Black Expo, Ohio Black Expo, is going to take place in Columbus on the 23rd and the 24th. And we're calling it C-Bus right now for obvious reasons. If you saw the show last week,
The Unity Reunion Parade, Cookout, Line Dance Party, Backyard, Barbecue, Fish Fry, Vegan Soul, Black Business, Food Truck, Networking, Outdoor, Concert, Music Festival, Celebration of the Year.
It is an amazing experience. You have people from all over the country.
This is my second year attending, and they over-delivered.
So if you haven't come before, you need to come.
Hey, you know what? I'm just out here vibing.
Get tickets now at OhioBlackExpo.com.
So go to OhioBlackExpo.com to get more information about this fabulous festival that's going to take place Memorial Day weekend. We're calling it C-Bus, and we'll give you more on that later. Also, we just want to acknowledge the Cleveland Observer. We will be right back after this word from them.
Cleveland has stories worth telling and voices that deserve to be heard. That's why the Cleveland Observer is proud to sponsor 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Antonio on AM 1490 WERE, where truth, culture, and conversation come together. Each week, host Vince Robinson and Antonio open the door to powerful discussions, from the arts and community history to the issues shaping our neighborhoods today. And the Cleveland Observer is right there with them, shining a light on the people and movements building a stronger Cleveland. Tune in to 360 Info Network and visit CLEobserver.com to read, watch, and share more stories that inform, inspire, and unite our community. Because together, we are Cleveland's voice.
Cleveland's voice, the Cleveland Observer. And again, you can go to clevelandobserver.com and you can take advantage of the publication that is online, and it's also in various outlets around the city. So keep a watch out and get your copy today. We're going to get back to the action here on 360 Info Network with Nana Kra Kwamina II, also known as Dr. Kwa David Whitaker, as we look to see his video pop up. It seems as though he's stepped away for a few moments, but if you are watching us online, you can check us out on YouTube and also the 360 Info Network Facebook page. You can take advantage of the programming that we're doing there. When you go to those respective places, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channels. Brother Antonio, did you get your channel back up?
Yeah, I think I'm good. Yes.
Okay, so you can go to the Journey with Antonio on YouTube and check out his content there. Yes, you're back on. You're back on. So it looks like we got Dr. Whitaker, Nana Kra Kwamina back, and we can continue our conversation. Brother Antonio?
Yeah, so basically what you just described, Doc, is that, you know, a serious reset. And I'm calling this country, you know, I think they just slipped a reset on us. And we just, because if you remember during Biden, what he was talking about, we need a reset. You remember that, Vince? Where he made that statement. And I think that's what we're going through, because wages is going to change, you know, products is going to change, and our way of life. Now this may work. You know, some people might say, hey, I might stick it out, because black folks is used to being, you know, having to struggle, make something out of nothing. And, you know, we've been able to do those things and survive at this point. So some say they might wait out the ship, stay on the ship, and and fend for it and work it out. But again, my question is, do other people in this country, can they survive a change in lifestyle like that? My question is, if you got black folks that are affluent and having affluent neighborhoods and getting farmland and doing things like, will the other occupants of this country be okay with that and let you survive and let you persevere and let you self-sustain yourself and leave you alone? Look at some of the farmers are going through right now. Well, some of them are being attacked right now. Their fences are being pulled down, burnt down. They messing with their equipment and things like that, just because we got black farmers that are starting to get into the game and producing things. So my question: will you be left alone if you was to prosper and unite here? Can the European family in this country, those ones in the deep south, be okay with you prospering and they themselves having an issue of surviving? Will they leave you alone? That is the question.
Yeah. And when you look at it historically, Brother Antonio, it seems as though they always want to destroy our success.
For sure.
I'm reminded of the situation where there were some brothers who had some petroleum companies and they were operating successfully. And of course, something like the Klan shows up and burns everything down. It's like it's extreme jealousy, or perhaps it goes back to Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, that fear of genetic annihilation. I think it might be something that you might call epigenetic. So they carry it from generation to generation, their will to prevent us from being what we are and who we are. And so, when we look at the future, I think it is going to come to a place where we're going to have to create situations where we're self-sufficient. I mean, the example that you pointed out about the pomegranates, and this is something that was predicted way back when. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Soylent Green.
Oh, definitely.
But the projection was that at some time in the future, those delicacies would not be available to everyone. And so what Nana has given us is this idea of the rise and fall of civilizations. And typically, historically, they have lasted 250 years. So if you think about the establishment of the United States, 1776, and that whole piece, well, that's where we are right now. So there's the 5 stages that he mentioned. He shared a video with us just a few days ago that really laid out that whole scenario. And so that's exactly what we're seeing. The other thing that I wanted to invoke is the business of war, because war is a business and it has no respect for persons or property. The companies that are involved in the business of war get paid to blow things up and put them back together. Doesn't matter about the people in those countries. It doesn't matter that the United States is willing to send its 18 and 19-year-olds into a situation where those who really understand military strategy know that they have no hope. You can't go into an isolated country like Iran and expect to win, and I think the video mentioned the fact that you're taking on folks who are running around in sandals.
Right.
While the military comes on and they've got the sophisticated boots, but you're using a $3 million type of weapon to neutralize a $5,000 drone.
But here's the thing, though, Vince. We sit back and honestly believe. I mean, we not even think about, like, Iran was just sitting back twiddling their thumbs and didn't know at one point in time that they're going to have to defend themselves and they've been preparing for this for years.
Yeah.
For years, hidden bunkers, underground stuff, stockpiling what they need to have, it ain't like this is new to them, that they didn't know one day that this may come. It's just again shows that, that's why I say divine order, because it don't make any sense. How you start a war and don't have a plan? How do you do that? I guess he just thought it was just he's just gonna walk through somebody and take the president like Venezuela and go on about his business. You didn't think that possibly there might be some issues with the goods, being shipped. You didn't think none of that through. But yet and still, he fires all his veteran generals. Put some old punk rascal as the Secretary of Defense or War, or whatever you want to call him, and they have no experience at all. Like I say, it's a perfect storm for a fall. It just don't make logical sense at all. So that's why I say this must be divine order. This must be that time must be up, for where we at, and because for some of us, we've been asking about karma for a long time, because right now so many things that we just not finding out that was done to Black folks. Let me just say this real quick, Ben. I was just looking at a little piece about Rosewood, and Ed Bradley did a piece in 1982 about that, and was interviewing two old white people that was there during the time of the Rosewood situation. And the white people were saying, they said the people were crazy, and they gave the sheriff and the deputy 5 minutes. Y'all got 5 minutes to get out of town, or we gonna take care of you too. And they went in setting fire to all the people's houses, and when they was running out, they were shooting the old women, kids, and everything, just shooting the dog like dogs. And I was like, I'd be doggone, what? Who does that like that? What kind of, you see, all these type of things are coming out, and that's why they have an issue with history and telling the story like it is. So, and I'm saying somebody got to pay for all that ugliness, and that's why I say, you can't get longevity off of ugliness like that. Somebody got to pay. My father always used to say, somebody got to pay for that. And if you're a spiritual person at all and believe in karma, that you don't get away with that.
Yes. Well, when you talk about payment, that invokes the whole idea of reparations in this country, and that's something that we will never see. And we're looking at the establishment of a new financial system it's being carried out as we speak. But we have so many distractions, like the war that's taking place in Iran, and all the other things that the government is doing right now, and the companies that control the governments are doing. See, because that's really the critical issue.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
We're moving into a new system of currency, and currency and energy have been the things that they have used to control populations. They control the food supply, they control the energy, and they control the currency.
Mm-hmm.
The currency that we're using right now is pretty much being shut down. It's pretty much being shut down because they're moving towards a new type of currency. And we talked about the BRICS earlier, where a glaring example of that is what's happening in the Straits of Hormuz. And, Nana Kra Kwamina talked about the petrodollar.
Mm-hmm.
And the petrodollar is being backed away from by several countries. So now you have people purchasing petroleum with the yuan, the Chinese currency. The BRICS have a new type of currency that's partially backed by gold and some other commodities. So they're moving to a new system, but for the most part, the masses are in the dark about that, and what's happening is the banks are taking their time to establish themselves in the new infrastructure. And digital assets are a key part of that whole system. So, for instance, in Iran, they want transactions in Bitcoin instead of US dollars. That is a very significant development when it comes to money being used in this planet, and power slipping away from the United States, because countries around the world don't want the US dollar to be weaponized in that. Nana, we were
Tired
just
of it.
talking.
Mhm.
We were just talking about the BRICS, the new currency that they're using, the pushback on the petrodollar, and the fact that that agreement is no longer because folks are not being forced to use the U.S. dollar. And we also talked about this new financial system that's being based on digital assets. What are your thoughts about that? And we're going to be winding down in just about a minute. We're at 11:58, so we're gonna wind down the radio broadcast and migrate over to YouTube. But real quickly, and I know it's hard, but real quickly, just a closing thought before we move over to the next phase of the show.
Well, I don't know how I got bumped off, but anyway, I tried to get back on. I kept trying because I figured you were trying to get to me just like I was trying to get to you.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like what you're saying comes down to one word and one concept. As African people, or as any people on the planet, what you want is independence and sovereignty. Anything that compromises your ability to be free is an impediment. I don't care how you describe it, because the idea is to be free to make decisions, to make plans, and to organize your existence on earth in a manner that suits you and serves your needs. So anything that means that you are going to be subjected to surveillance, control, and constant manipulation is contrary to the concept of being free and sovereign.
Okay, so the key word is freedom, and the key word is sovereignty. The key word is being self-sufficient, and that's where we have to move. We have about 25 seconds left here, so I just want to take this opportunity to thank our engineer, Tone Harley, for facilitating our broadcast today, and to thank you for listening. You can continue to view us on YouTube and the 360 Info Network Facebook page. Until then, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace, y'all.
Peace, peace, peace.
All right, it's 12 o'clock noon, straight up here in Cleveland, Ohio, where all three of us are. We know that there are folks who check us out from other parts of the country and other parts of the world, as a matter of fact. So if you didn't know, you can always check us out on YouTube. You can go to The Journey with Hamtonio and watch us live beginning at 11 o'clock. You can also go to my YouTube channel. You can go to the 360 Info Network Facebook page, and you can go to my personal Facebook page. So there are a lot of different ways that you can get to us. And if you get stuck and you can't get to any of those things, you can go to newstalkcleveland.com and listen to our program live on the internet. Our guest this afternoon is Nana Kra Kwamina II, also known to some of you as Dr. Kwa David Whitaker, and we're having a significant conversation today about things that are happening in our world today that we need to know about. Brother Hamtonio?
Yes, again, we can't talk about it enough, that our need to connect and really get ourselves in the right frame of mind. Doc, I remember a conversation that I had with you, and we was talking about, how it's almost a natural thing for blacks in America and Africa to come together. We tend to have, some of the needed education and some of the economics that is needed to be self-sufficient. We have to be frank about it. African Americans, have more wealth than any other group of black folks on the planet. And if we ever got ourselves together, it would probably change the whole dynamics of the planet. Blacks in the diaspora all over would probably change if we ever got ourselves together. But what we're missing, and something that I've been preaching for 20 plus years, is a common culture, a common way of life. And Doc, one time you came on and expressed that, in length on how important a common culture is. So with that conversation, we talked about how it's a perfect marriage between the African and the African American. They have the culture, which we lack, but they lack the economics and some of the education. So if we ever bridge that gap, we could be a powerful nation. So your thoughts on that, Doc?
I think it's It should be. Now, this is the irony: is what you just said should be obvious, but it isn't. So why isn't it obvious? I think about this all the time. It's not obvious because when our ancestors were brought to the U.S., or the U.S. didn't exist at that time when they were brought to North America, over time, our mental cognitive hard drive was programmed in a way that it receives certain information and interprets information in a certain way, just like your computer. If you have a Safari browser, it naturally provides information to you that's different than if you had a Google browser. If you have a PC, you just can't go to a Mac and start typing in the same things because it's configured in a different way. And it's designed to get and organize information in a certain pattern. So in the US, we've been programmed. It's so subtle, but it's so powerful at the same time. We've been programmed to think automatically that America is honest, America is the best, America is the first, America is whatever we've been programmed to believe. So it's hard for us to question that. The same as with different spiritual systems. The system is designed to format your mind so that there will be things that are automatic. You don't have to question them. And those beliefs become the buffers and the protections against alternative information that is also in the environment. So you're programmed to believe what we believe. So we've been programmed to believe that Africans are poor, they're backwards, they're not civilized. And so that's part of our hard drive. So that's the first thing that comes up when you say the word Africa. You think of children with flies flying around their eyes all the time. They're warring with each other. They're backwards. They've sold us into slavery. All these things as part of our programming. On the other side, the African people have been programmed through cultural imperialism based upon whatever colonizing entity there was. The colonizers have programmed them to feel that we abandoned them. We went away and we got rich and we never looked back to help them. And we are now living large and we don't like them and they don't like us. So we've both been programmed. And to cut through the programming, we have to, in a sense, you'd have to let your computer crash, change the hard drive so that it's programmed in a different way. So there's always people in the world that have been subjected to the same programming, but somehow or another, they still can work around that program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they can see and admit to themselves that we've been programmed. Like Malcolm said, it's hard to admit to yourself that you've been tricked, bamboozled, run amok.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that admit that to themselves. And then you can begin to see what's behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're three of those people that can look at our lives and say, you know, I went for the okie doke. I went for the okie doke and
Oh, they got him called and jumped him off. And
Yeah.
and it's funny that he was just saying that. I've been telling people, I said, as a matter of fact, I just said it last night at work. You know, you got it's almost like the substance abuse. Before healing can take place, you got to admit that there's a problem. And that's what I'm not getting from my folks out here, you know, because they don't act like there's an issue, you know, that is going on. So I agree with that wholeheartedly that we have to recognize that, and that's what I'm saying. I'm recognizing that I've been brainwashed, and everything that I've been taught, has been given to me from a European viewpoint and standpoint. If you don't never come to that conclusion, Doc, I don't know if healing can take place. Go ahead, Doc. I said we got you back.
Yeah, I think he's still working on
Working
getting
on,
back in.
yeah.
But you know what, brother Antonio, it's really interesting that you mentioned that. And I reflect on a life in which I was a military dependent, and I was going to libraries very frequently. I was sitting in those classrooms, and it's kind of difficult to not celebrate being an American when everything that you're told is
Absolutely,
that America
absolutely.
is everything, and you want to, you want to embrace that. But then at a certain point, you wake up, and that's the point in your life where you say to yourself, I refuse to pledge allegiance to the flag because you woke up.
Absolutely. So you have to come to that epiphany. If we don't come to that understanding and that conclusion that everything we've been taught is from the worldview on how we are living a European experience.
Mhm.
It's not an African experience. Just like white and black is 180 degrees from different from each other, we almost think 180 degrees different. How we think of nature, how we worship, how we like our woman, our humor, it's almost 180 degrees different. So if we are experiencing a European experience, this is their worldview. This is how they do things. This is how they look at nature. You know, Doc can sit up and tell us so many rituals in Africa on how they relate to nature and land and asking for permission and praying and respect. You got it with the Native American over here. They ain't fencing in water. Water was, he said, God gave us this for everybody to survive. But these guys want to put fences around it and claim it as theirs. And it's a whole different way of life and understanding. And I'm saying, and I'm going to give it right back to you, Doc. What I'm saying is that we get into this reactionary culture that Dr. Amos Wilson talking about. We get into all these things that support and give energy to the same people that got their foot on your neck. When you really want to get into deep spirituality by you speaking certain things and acting out atrocities and Thanksgiving, where it's a mourning situation for the Native Americans, they ain't happy about Thanksgiving. And so all that negative energy that you are celebrating, this negative energy, and unbeknownst to you, what you are doing. So you're giving power to those things. And if you really knew your culture, Doc can sit up here and tell you that Africans have all kind of things that they give honor back to, and honor back to nature and the creator. If you only knew your stuff, because some people say I'm doing Thanksgiving because it gives a chance for the family to get together. But if you knew your culture, there's plenty of traditional things and festivals that you can get in to come together, have family come together. Am I right, Doc?
You're right. Every time I realize now that every time somebody tries to call me,
yeah, right.
I disconnect that call. It disconnects me from the sound.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I'm faster about getting it back. There's probably a way to mute that. I just don't know what it is.
I'll show you what it is, Nana. You just have
Okay.
to put your phone on do not disturb,
Oh,
and then you won't get. Yeah, I'll show you how to do it.
Okay, that'll be good to know, because everything, one of the ancient understandings is that is know thyself, and it's inscribed in the tombs in Kemet. It was in the Matrix where Neo went to see the Oracle. It was the writing above the door, and it tells us important things if we understood it. It tells us that there's only two kind of people in the world: those that know and those that don't know. And it says, a person who knows not and knows not that they know not is foolish. Disregard them. A person that knows not and knows that they know not is simple. Teach them. A person who knows not and believes that they know, like the president of our nation, is dangerous. Avoid them. A person who knows but knows not that they know is asleep. Awaken them. And a person who knows and knows that they know is wise. Follow them. And all of these persons reside in you. So know thyself, and to Ma'at be true. Now, that's an ancient inscription that our ancestors knew thousands of years ago. And it plays out right now down to anything you're talking about, as simple as me not knowing how to stop the interruptions on my phone. I have the capacity to solve a problem. The only issue is I don't know how to do it. So we're talking about the same thing on every level. We're talking right now about how to do something that it appears we need to do, but most people don't know how to do it. So there have to be some people that understand how to do it and say, just like y'all said to me, don't worry, I'll show you. Show you how to do it.
Right.
I know how to do it. I'll be able to do it.
I think that's a really good segue into our conversation about tokenization of real world assets and digital assets in general, because most of us don't know. I mean, I commend you for what you've been able to do in terms of your connection to digital assets, because you can navigate in that world. But most of us who, and I'll just use the term long in the tooth, and I'm not accusing you of being old, I'm giving you respect as an elder. But most of us who get to this stage in life don't really have that connection to the new technology, but the new technology is being used to create a new system of economics, finance, and the movement of currency. And so 95 to 99% of us are in the dark about that, and we don't know. And because we don't know, we don't experience it, we don't take advantage of it, because it is something that you can invest in and see returns. And that's why those same folks who 4 or 5 years ago who were saying, oh, don't trust cryptocurrency, it's evil, it's being used for illicit purposes, blah blah blah, now they're buying as much of it as they can. They're lining their pockets. They're taking advantage of it while it's still priced at a low price point, and they're just biding their time till it goes way up in value. The whales that we talk about, they're acquiring the digital assets that we have knowledge of, those who are involved in it. But most of the world, all they know is Bitcoin, and they think that Bitcoin is bad. But as we said, Bitcoin is being used to pay for oil in the Straits of Hormuz. So if it didn't have any practical use or value, do you think it would be used for that right now? What are your thoughts about this new economic system that we're dealing with?
Well, I think that what you're describing is how the people that know take advantage of all the people that don't know. I try to explain to people that are in my age group that the cryptocurrency is to us what a cell phone was to the generation that came before us, which is the same thing that a radio was to generation way back. How is it possible that you're telling me that someone is sitting in another country and I'm able to listen to them on this box? That just seems implausible, because we're used to face-to-face communication. So if you're if your hard drive is wired in a way that you can only imagine a bird flying, then it's very difficult for you to accept that a big thing like a plane could actually be in the air. But the concept, the idea of living is to always be prepared to make changes, experience growth. And we're talking about the same thing in different arrangements. So you're talking about money. For example, we would say to someone, well, you say that cryptocurrency can't be used for money because you don't understand it. But the dollar that you just gave me to gain interest into this venue is not supported by anything. It's a piece of paper. It's a piece of paper that you're using as a commodity that we're accepting. So that's what makes it work.
It's all about acceptance.
All acceptance. So
Mhm.
it goes back to the days where you were engaged in barter.
Mhm.
Everything was worth only what you're willing to accept it for.
Mhm.
Same thing today. That piece of paper, you're willing to accept it, and I'll give you what I say is $5 worth of potatoes. But it may not be $5 worth of potatoes at all. It may be 4 pounds of potatoes instead of 5. And your dollar's not worth anything either. So I'm giving you something and you're giving me something and we're both satisfied. So we say it's okay.
Mhm.
But it's artificial. It's all based upon our agreement to do something. And so, but you have to be current with the time and the configuration of living. Otherwise, you're going to be victimized by everything because you're not a participant. You're sitting on the sidelines and not learning whatever we're currently doing. So you're just putting yourself at a disadvantage because now at some point you will potentially be required to operate in this venue, in this arrangement that you know nothing about. And now you're a victim of circumstances. You have to trust everyone, or you have to get someone to do something for you that you could have done yourself. You're just afraid. You're just intimidated. And so you're not courageous about life. Life requires us to do different things all the time. And you have to be prepared to do that and approach life like African people approach life without fear. That's why the planet is populated, because African people don't have any problem going anywhere at any time. So life as we know started on the African continent. That's not disputable anymore. And so the planet is populated only because of the curiosity of these people. They look out and say, I wonder what's over there. So you want to go see. You go check it out, just like we check out a new restaurant that everybody's talking about. We don't know where it is, but we go find it because we want to see. So our sense of curiosity is what allows us to be part of new developments because things are there that they're only waiting for someone to conceptualize it and attempt to do it and see if it will work because you're just curious. But I got cut off at a point where there was something I wanted to mention that you were talking about rituals and different spiritual activities. Like
Yes.
new today, as you recognize immediately, yeah, as soon as we saw, if we were in Ghana today, right now, we would ask Brother Antonio, whose funeral is he participating in? Would we ask him that? Because this is a Saturday and funerals take place in Ghana on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And on Saturday, the customary spiritual colors are black and red. So we would see people on the highway, in the marketplace, on the roads, wearing certain colors. And we would know, even though we don't know them, that they are going to or coming from a funeral. And so we would ask them, whose funeral is it that you're observing or participating in? Because those are the colors you would wear on that day for that occasion. That's culture. So everybody would know that. So we could say, my condolences to your friend or your family member, whoever. And 99.9% of the time, we're going to be accurate because he's dressed in a way that reflects the cultural observations of Saturday. And so we would know these things and we would know how to behave. So part of culture is to have two things we're talking about right now. Part of culture, the 5 basic cultural elements, is you have to have a mechanism that enables you to understand how to interpret reality. That's the first element of culture. Second, you have to have a sense of a code of conduct that explains to people how you behave. So if Lynn was wearing that on Monday, we would be questioning, why is he dressed like that? Because there's no funerals on Monday. And you're kind of out of character or out of costume or out of the proper attire for the day of the week. And that wouldn't make sense to people because we have a code of conduct. Then the third element, you'd have to teach those two things to the next generation who wouldn't know this. Even a child in Ghana knows that if Lynn is dressed like that, there must be a funeral somewhere. Even a child knows that. So we have to transfer that knowledge to the next generation. Otherwise, we have a culture that begins to implode because people don't know the rules. They don't know how to interpret what's happening. Then, of course, you have to have a way to sustain yourself. You have to have some kind of economy. How is a village going to maintain itself if it can't eat? It has no food, it has no shelter, it has no clothing, it has no economic enterprise. And I submit, without any threat of being proven wrong, that as Black people, we have no independent economy that will allow us to provide for our needs. If we did, we wouldn't be worried that there's no food in a grocery store because we would have food. We wouldn't be worried that there's no meat in the grocery store because we would have animals someplace that we could eat if we wanted to. The fact that we don't have that cultural element puts us in harm's way. If the trucks don't run and at Heinen's, we could actually starve to death. We don't have farms. We don't produce anything that we can eat. So if it's not provided for us, we become subject to starvation. A culture does not allow itself to be in that position. And the fifth element, if you have all these 4 elements, how are you going to protect those things? How are you going to protect yourself from the elements in the environment, storms, floods, whatever, animals that might be flesh-eating animals that could attack you? How are you going to protect yourself from them? Other people that might want what you have, how are you going to protect yourself? So culture has 5 basic elements, and I submit we don't, as a people, have any of them. We don't have number 1, we don't know how to interpret what's going on. We don't even care what's going on. We just turn on CNN and whatever they tell us, we think that makes sense. We don't know what's going on. So that's a problem. We don't know what's going on physically. We don't know what's going on spiritually. So we can't make practical decisions because we don't have any knowledge about what's going on. We don't have a code of conduct. We simply do anything we want wherever we decide to do it, no matter how ridiculous it looks or it appears. And we have no mechanism to teach our youth, the next generation, how to behave. So and then we say we have this culture. And even with all of that, segueing back to our connection, somehow or another, the ancestors that were brought out of the continent 25 generations, 27 generations ago, that ended up in what is now the United States of America, have somehow, through innate capacity and African heritage that's been left down to its smallest, minutest remembrance, has still permitted the African American person, the American collective, to become the iconic figures on the whole planet. Cool when it comes to being smart, when it comes to being rich, when it comes to being creative. Somehow, all this deprivation and adjustments to it and tenacity, because you got to give credit to all of our ancestors for being tenacious, for being resilient, for being creative, for sticking to it generation after generation after generation. And now we are, as a people, without all the 5 cultural elements, we have still managed to become the envy of the world when it comes to music, dance, resilience, creativity, everything. And so to me, that is the great substance that the biblical prophecy is talking about. And so I tell people in Ghana now, for example, they accuse me of not liking white people. I don't dislike white people. But unlike you, and this is what I would like to convince Africans, because Africans actually have no long-term experience with white people. So I say, unlike you, I actually know white people. I've spent 80 years with white people, and you've only seen tourists. So the difference between me and you is I actually know these people from experience. So if you took my experience with them and we matched it with your experience with them, and we took my attributes and put those with your attributes and the resources that are available to you that will be available to us, then we have the makings of a powerful partnership and collaboration. Things that you don't know from experience, not reading books, not what your colonial education taught you. I know from experience, and you know things from experience that I don't have. So if we put those two together, we become a powerful force, and we're using our respective talents and experiences to chart a course that will allow us to be free, sovereign, and self-determined.
Nana, if I could interrupt for a second, I'm just reflecting on being in the village of Atonkwa and witnessing the cultural responsibility that a chief has for its village. And this is something that is largely absent here because we don't have a council of elders. We don't have any of those things in place. But to just give people a sense of how we can be responsible for, and I hate to use this term, but I'll use it anyway, governing ourselves. Can you talk a little bit about how Africans manage their, I'll say,
affairs,
people resources, their people resources?
A chief like our village of Atonkwa, when I say our village, it's your village too. We're all in the same village. Our village of Atonkwa has about 1,700 residents. First of all, it's older than the United States. Our village is over 300 years old. The stool that I'm sitting on now is the stool that was occupied by Nana Kra Kwamina the first. He was a regent in the village. Regent meaning wasn't technically a chief in the traditional sense of it, but he was the presiding officer of the village for some time. He didn't take the name of the chief that preceded him, which was Nana Eduakwa. So he kept his name. And so my stool or my position is his name, and I'm the second person. But that was over 300 years ago. So I'm mentioning that to mention that before colonials arrived, Africa already had systems in place to do things that are done. So in our village, you have to think of a village as a city. So a chief is the ultimate presiding officer over a city and all of its municipal functions. So a chief becomes the chief of police, the chief of the medical system, the chief of the economy, the chief of education. So a chief is like a father of a huge family. So every function of the governmental apparatus of the city of Cleveland, all of those functions are overseen by a chief of a village. All the same functions. How are we going to get food? How are we going to distribute the food? How are we going to teach children? Who's going to be responsible for that? So a chief is supported by, like the mayor of Cleveland has a city council. The chief has a council of advisors that tend to be the heads of the families that make up that village. 6 families, predominantly 6 families make up our village. So almost all the people in the village are members of one of these 6 families. So we have the heads of those families that are advisors to the chief, which would be like the chief's council. So you have the heads of families, you have the chief that consults with the heads of families. The heads of families will be divided up into different responsibilities. You have your police force. How are we going to protect ourselves if animals or whatever happen? We have like our own little police department to deal with things. You have a court system, because if you have 1,700 people, there's bound to be grievances or disagreements or problems. So they have the local court that takes place in the village to resolve these conflicts, to pass judgment, to make sure everybody is satisfied. The one interesting thing about African governance that is different from the US, when we go to court here, you have 2 elements that are important. One is responsibility for whatever has happened and restitution. So somebody's found guilty of something, you have to pay the other person something to make them whole. So those are the 2 elements. You have responsibility and restitution. Well, in our village, in most villages, you have a 3rd element. You have responsibility, restitution, and reconciliation. Because if you live in a place where you got just 6 families and there's conflict, after you resolve the responsibility and restitution, you still have to live with these people, the same people every day. So, and you're going to need each other. So they have a 3rd element of reconciliation to make sure everybody is satisfied with the result of this conflict. So we won't be dealing with it again tomorrow or next week, or we won't bring it up 6 months from now. We resolve that in total. Responsibility, restitution, and reconciliation, because you have to maintain a sense of harmony in order to keep functioning together. So that's a difference that I see, that we don't have that. Something happens with us and we simply say when we leave the court, well, I ain't gonna never talk to them again.
Mm-hmm.
function like that because we live in a big area. So you can go every day without ever talking to that person another time. But in a village, you don't have that luxury. You're going to see that person the first thing tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So if there's conflict, it has to be resolved and it has to be reconciled so that everybody is pleased with the result, or as pleased as you can be with the result. So those are functions. You have marriages, you have funerals, you have weddings, you have all school graduations. So all of this is managed by the chief. The chief is the ultimate decision maker, just like a father in a family. So sometimes when we talk about, well, one of the things that the US and any Western government discusses every now and then is socialism versus capitalism versus some other ism. So I remind people that the management system that we are most familiar with from growing up is actually socialism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The parents in a family determine what to do with all of the resources. And we come to understand that that's the position that they're in. So if you talk about the government going to a sense of socialism, what's scary to people is capitalists don't want the government to have control over all these resources and making all these decisions. And then a socialist system has to rely on the trust, integrity, and goodwill of the person that's in charge, because corruption could be at an all-time high. But the system that we're most familiar with is socialism. We've done it in our own families, growing up with our children. That's the way we grew up. And somebody has to decide, what do we do in a responsible way to use the resources that we have? So a village, in a sense, is based on a lot of socialist strategies and procedures where you say, well, we don't have enough to go around. So what do we do with them? Who are the most needy? What makes the most sense? And so that's the role of a chief, a queen mother, the council of elders, or the heads of families. That's how it's run. A village is like a city, and all of the components of a city exist within that village. And you have community meetings, so everybody knows what is happening. And so young people can tell you what the rules are. Everybody knows the rules. So you can, things that we see when we go to Ghana, for example, is probably not untrue in other African nations either, but it surprises us that vendors at the end of a workday could just put a piece of cloth over all of their stuff and leave.
Right. Uh-huh.
And in the middle of the night, anybody could come and take all of their goods, but they just put a piece of cloth over it so that the rain won't soak it or whatever. And they come back the next day and they take the cloth open and they're open for business. And it amazes us how they could do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a cultural integrity, and people would say, used to say, well, why would they leave that like that and just go? And you're told that, well, it'll be there tomorrow. I'd say, well, somebody could take it. They said, well, why would somebody do that? They know it's not theirs.
Ain't that something? That's funny.
Why would anybody do that? They know that belongs to that person.
Mm-hmm.
That's not their stuff. So why would somebody do that? So the idea of theft, like we know it, is foreign to most people. They said nobody would do that. So you wouldn't have to worry about that because nobody would come to that conclusion. So we have a lot that we can learn by going to Africa. Most people realize that they have no actual sense of family and community in the US. You live in a neighborhood, an apartment building, in a village, closed, self-contained area, but You don't know the people that live next door to you or on the next floor. You don't know them. You have nothing in common with them other than you occupy the same space. But in our village, everybody knows everybody in the village. They know every stranger because they know that you don't live there when they see you. So it's a different kind of living. And the one surprising things to most people is how you could go around and see so many people and no police presence because people are self-managed. Everybody knows what the code of conduct is, and everybody knows when you're violating it. And to me, as a chief, one of the codes of conduct is that nobody in the village would allow me to carry luggage. So if I drive in with my car from the airport and open my trunk to get my luggage out, people will run to me and say, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. I'll do that. Because they know that it would be an embarrassment for a chief to be carrying his own luggage in a village of 1,700 people. And somebody would have seen that. So it would be inappropriate in a social context to allow that to happen. So it's just different rules. Most of us are inspired by seeing these things because we remember from what our grandparents used to tell us or experiences we used to have, and we know that we have
Gotten away.
long slide
Mm-hmm.
that we used to do. And we still remember some of them, and we can't figure out when it was that went away.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
there.
Yeah, I think we have experienced some of those cultural affectations here because it's just part of who we are. So there are countless times that I've heard people talk about how our neighborhoods used to be. You know, if you acted up down the street, by the time you got home, you know, you'd already been dealt with and you'd get dealt with again. But this was a way that we policed ourselves. And I'm just remembering being in the village and seeing that staff with the red ribbon on it and being told that if somebody comes to you with that, you know,
yeah, right. You better report.
You got to report, you know, but I'm thinking about that against the context of what happened with the Supreme Court and the ruling that was made about voting and all those other kinds of things. But looking at the reality of this whole idea of democracy, when it's truly not a democracy, because everybody doesn't participate in it. Everybody doesn't have an equal presence in that whole system. And it's something that we've been dealing with for all these years, and it hasn't served us. But we look at that as being the gold standard of how people should be governed. But then when you look at what you just described, it's like, well, if you got 6 families that comprise overlooking this whole situation, why would a family want to exploit itself? This government exploits the entire family. Exploitation and taxation is the name of the game, you know. But to go back to, and you were using the term socialism, and I think for most of us, socialism has a negative context just because what we've been told about it.
That's right. That's right. Mm-hmm.
But in essence, what it really is, it's communalism.
Right.
It's the community being responsible for itself. And then we bring in the Nguzo Saba, and you see how those things work together. And so it enables everyone to have a good life because everybody's taken care of because their needs are being met by each other and not a system that chooses to exploit everyone in the interest of profit. And so some people enjoy a good standard of life and then everybody else suffers.
But with that too, though, that's why it's with everything across the board, the selection process is very serious on who you're going to put as heads as those in those positions. That direction, that understanding. That's why, with like I said, the European concept of a chief or king, somebody laid back, eating grapes and everybody just doing everything for them. It's work. to be a chief of the, as Nana just described. That's work, you know, and so it's not set up the same way. And I'm tying that in to saying this is how we think, this is how other people perceive that. It's a total different thought. It's a total different process of understanding, and we are living in the understanding and worldview of other folks, Europeans, on how they do something. And like I say all the time, when you're dealing with an older people, an older civilization, it's nothing new under the sun. Some of these issues and problems that we are going through, they have already solved that. And what I say, Vince, the ancestors say, when you going to try me? I'll lay down everything for you to live and how to navigate. Older culture. We could go on about all the proverbs that ancient Africans has come up on how to live and how to guide yourself and how to get you out of certain circumstances, how you should be thinking, how you should be vibing, how your role as a child, as a wife, as a husband, your responsibilities to the community, how when you have conflicts, all of that stuff has been already vetted out.
Right. All of it is known. And when we look at the things that the foundational principles, it just behooves us to be objectively honest with ourselves. If we say that the codified language of the West is democracy is a way of governance that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. If we just take that statement and match it against what we see happening, we know that that is not true. We just have to admit that to ourselves. If that's the definition of democracy, then the democracy that we are living does not match the definition. So this is not what we've been told it is, because it doesn't work like that. In a village, what I described to you, you could see in hundreds of different villages all day long, because that's the description of a village, and that's how a village operates. And when you go to a village, if you just sit and observe, you would see that that's how it operates. So at least it's true to what it says it is. It may not be glamorous. It may not be economically rich, but it's true to what it describes itself as being. We don't have that. We could almost take anything we have and match it against the reality that we see, and we would determine that it's not a match. The words say one thing.
Say it again.
It says something else. So both of these things cannot be true. And we have been programmed, and we want to be convinced that people tell me now, well, America has its problems, but it's still the best place in the world to live. I say, that's only because you haven't been anywhere else. That's the only way you could say that. It's not the best place to live. If you had an experience living somewhere else, you'd realize that lots of other places are better than this. We're living.
The question is, Doc, what are you basing that opinion on? Some amenities? Is it just that you basing that opinion on?
It's mostly what you've been told. Someone says, well, we've got some problems, but this is still the best place in the world to live. But if you haven't lived someplace else, that's an assumption. That's rhetoric. That's advertising. I'm trying to convince you to accept these problems because I'm telling you that it's still the best place you could be. So put up with these problems because it's the best it's going to get. But you could say, well, I don't know about that. I'm going to go explore some other places. And then when I get back, I'll have some evidence that I can put to the test to see if you're right. If I have to put up with that, I guess I'll put up with it. But what if I don't have to put up with it? And now we've seen enough other things to know that this is not the best place, and it's going to become more evident in the next 6 months to a lot of other people. That's all we're saying based on these dynamics, the global dynamics, the global changes, the shifts, the things that are happening now. If they play themselves out, the next 6 months here is going to be very, very difficult for us to adjust to.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. You know, touch a little bit, Doc, on, again, because again, we've been taught, and the rhetoric and the narrative that's been forced upon us, because it's all an indoctrination. So the indoctrinating factors and our belief systems on what we heard about Africa and what we're doing, that awakening piece, the the level of consciousness being risen, and people starting to be, because this internet thing has made the world a little smaller, and folks are getting information, and they're starting to look at themselves different, and so with that in mind, that has to, in that in particular individual, got to spark some type of curiosity. And a lot of times I be held, it's being said that, hey, Len, well, people don't reach the same, and level at the same time. But if you are a walking, warm-blooded human being that is navigating, right in front of you, and you 60 plus years old, something should be saying to you, hey, wait a minute, some of those conclusions that you just came up, something is not right, and there's a problem somewhere. So again, I think it's up to us, and to tear ourselves away from some of this rhetoric, and come to this conclusion, like we said before, that we've been brainwashed, and we're living an experience that is not in our best interest. In closing, I would like to say, with that type of consciousness thinking, we got to get to the point of, and I've come to the point of, if this country was made up of unjust people, my question is, how can you create a just society from unjust people? There's gonna always be some loopholes and some things that like I wrote in my book, I can write some beautiful words and it sounds real good on paper, but am I qualified, or do we have the people actually to follow? Is they capable of following through with those beautiful words? And we should know by history right now, and just like the Bible that they gave us, that they don't even follow themselves, we should know that by now, that it's just a bunch of rhetoric.
Well, what you're describing is what we say all the time: talk is cheap. Talk cheap.
Right.
Talk cheap. But we have to come to, I think we have to come to, not accept as if we agree with it, but we have to come to an understanding that the social structure that we live under in the West and in the United States is a structure that was put in place so that a small number of people could maintain control over other people. It was given the title of democracy, but you could define that democracy in different ways. This could be a demonocracy. Have people that say, look, there's only, say the three of us wanted to be in control of everybody in Cleveland. We'd have to come up with some kind of structure that would convince people, or it would sound attractive enough that they would say, that makes sense, let's go with that. And then we'd have to build into that structure those components that would allow us to modify that at any time that someone raised a question about it. we have to build in ways to modify that to explain why they were wrong and we were right and this was necessary. And then we'd have to keep doing that. And we would develop a system of indoctrination called formal education that we would try to convince the next generations to accept that concept over time, even though we know that all we are trying to do is to make sure that we are still in charge of all these people. So that's the kind of system that we have. And whenever we get someone becomes disgruntled with it or it doesn't seem to work, the system has to figure out what to do about that voice that's not in compliance. They've decided to kill most of the people, arrest them. You don't just have free speech, even though we say you have free speech, but you only have free speech as long as you're saying the right thing. As soon as you're not saying the right thing, that speech costs you. So that's kind of the system that we have. We've just been convinced that it's the best one, but it doesn't even work the way that it describes itself. And so if the words don't match what you see, that's the first indication to you that maybe something is off, because if those words meant what they say they mean, I don't think I'd be seeing this particular thing.
Yes, yes.
So we don't have the courage to actually face the facts, because we have enough evidence now that we know this system doesn't work the way it's described. We just know that, but what do we do about it? So I'm come back to saying, well, there's an African proverb that says, when it comes to dealing with young people, you advise and counsel them. If they don't listen, you let adversity teach them. So in a way, if we don't know things, we're like young, simply because we don't know. If you advise people that say, get your passport, get 2 passports if you can. Y'all said get 2 passports. That's even better, because you can be coming and going either way. I have 2 passports now. So when I fly to Ghana, I fly to Ghana using my US passport, because it's easier for me to get through customs right here and arrive there. On the way back, I come back with my Ghana passport, or however you want to switch it up, because you got 2 options. So Yao is right there. If you can get a second passport, that gives you a second avenue to deal with things that might come up. So if we've said this enough times, and the people that don't decide to get a passport, as the proverb says, you let adversity teach them. There's nothing else you can do. You can't fix everything. You can't convince people to do what you think they should do. That's their own independent decision. But I can say, no matter what happens, I'm not going to be worried about it.
But Doc, let me ask you a question. I mean, I wanted to bring this up a little earlier, and this is your expertise. And I we talked about the problem. We know, about our thinking. What is some of the apparatuses or the things that have caused this lack of vision, this forward thinking? We have to be able to obtain that. So what is it? Dependency has stricken and restricted this lack of vision, that we don't look into the future, because all we're doing is foretelling something is about to happen, and we're sitting on the sideline watching it happen. So evidently our vision of what we're seeing is stifled some kind of way. We have an issue. So what psychologically has lured us to sleep to that point to where our vision is stifled.
Well, I wish we had time to talk about this longer, but we only have, now this is a difficult thing. And most people will disagree with what I'm about to say. But the problem that we're having is we have some experiences now with non-African people in the West. And we are not pleased with the experiences that we've had vis-a-vis other people. What we don't know, because it hasn't become crystal clear to us, is that even though we don't like the experience that we're having, our interpretation of that experience is not an African interpretation, because we think pretty much like the people that we're having difficulty with. We're having difficulty with them because we don't like the feeling of the exchange that goes on between us. But our thinking is just like theirs. So when we go to other places where we see people that think differently, and we step back and observe ourselves, we could see that we are describing things exactly the way Europeans would. We just don't know how much we have become like our enemy.
Come on now, come on.
So I forget who, I think it was Steve Biko that said the most powerful weapon in the arsenal of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. We think exactly like Europeans think. We want what they want. We desire what they desire. Amos Wilson has a masterful description of it. We are just like the people that we are interacting with. We just don't like the position we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Psychologically, we just don't like the feeling of being the second-class citizen. But if we had the opportunity to be the first-class citizen in the same arrangement, that would be okay with us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Playing tricks on us. I took a lot of heat for something I'm going to say now. I hope I don't take heat again for it. But when the first bombing started in Israel and Palestine, I posted that it appears that the Israelis, the Jews, were not as upset with the Holocaust as we've been told. And my thinking was, if the Holocaust was as horrible
I got your point.
described to us, there's no way you could bring yourself to be doing the same thing to someone else. So it would not have been that bad. If the system is bad, the system is bad, and you wouldn't replicate it. If it's your position, it's like telling a woman that you're not actually upset about being raped. You just wish you were the one doing the raping. See, there's certain things that happen to us that are so horrific to us that even if we got a chance to do it to someone else, the first thing we would say, no, I can't do that, because I remember how I felt when I was in that position.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't care what you can't force me to do that, because I know what that felt like.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't take a baby of anybody and put it in a cage with the door open to see what an alligator would do with this baby. I just couldn't do that. Whether it's my child or it's not my child, I just couldn't do that. That just seems inhumane. So I think what we have to do is we have to search our consciousness and determine in as frank and honest and objective way as possible with ourselves. Is this a system that is workable? If it's workable, let's fix it. If it's not workable, we have to replace it. We do that all the time with all kinds of things. We do that with appliances in our house. If they don't work, we try to get them fixed. If we can't get them fixed, we try to replace them. Whether it's a car, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, anything. Once you determine that this is not working, you either try to fix it or you try to replace it. You don't keep saying it's good when you know in your heart that it's not good like that. So you just either you've given up on life, but nobody would just allow something to require something, and you say you're not going to do it, you're not going to try. Well, then you've given up. You're no longer living at all. You're not participating in the exchange called life. So there's always going to be something to be dealt with. So a living person is always prepared to try to deal with whatever is there to
Obstacles.
be with.
Mm-hmm.
That's life.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think the thing we have to begin to search our minds and determine just how Europeanized we are.
Ooh.
Not fighting against the things as much as we think we should be, because we are more like the things. So you're fighting against yourself. Say, well, that's really not that bad. But if you identify with it and you believe that it's like that, then that's the way you think. So of course it seems all right to you. It seems all right to you that a person could be incarcerated for having crack cocaine, and the young people that have powdered cocaine get a lighter sentence. You can make a rationale for why that makes sense. But if you step back from that and you say, well, these are two different sentences for the same basic thing, that's not right.
Two separate,
I'm sorry,
two separate systems for justice in this country.
Right.
I just wanted to invoke the idea of the extent to which our minds are controlled, because we have these conversations about war, and we always think about missiles and drones and aircraft carriers and all of that. But the real battle, the real war, is the one that is taking place in the minds. And one of the reasons that we're in the predicament that we're in right now is because systems of education and religion have failed us significantly.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about a nation that will just basically destroy people, kill people with no heart at all, innocent women, innocent children just being taken out, whoever's responsible for that, they can't have an iota of God within them.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not something that God, as we conceptualize it, is about. I watched a video earlier in the week. It was a teacher, I think, in the Cleveland Municipal School District, and he was asking his pupils how many dimes are in $150. It's a simple math question. You divide 150 by 0.10, and what is the answer? And do you know that some of these children did not know a dime from a nickel? It was, yeah, they didn't know a dime from a nickel. When you heard the answers that they were giving to this question, and he didn't give them the answer, he just said, okay, thank you, I appreciate you. So he was collecting these answers. And I'm just sitting here astounded. It's not that difficult. I could calculate that when I was 7 years old. And he was talking to high school students that didn't know it. I'm serious.
No.
It was mind blowing. I'm gonna have to find that video and post it for those who do not believe what I'm saying. But it just goes to show you how ignorant, and I'm saying it, ignorant is, because being ignorant is to not know. If being ignorant is to ignore the truth or facts or whatever, but to think that we would live in a country where you didn't know the difference between a dime and a nickel and you 17 years old, that's really telling. That's extremely telling, but
They don't
that's
know the fractional component of that and how it plays into the oneness, over a dollar or something. That's
right.
crazy.
But you juxtapose that against the idea or the image of America being the most
Greatest.
advanced civilization
Right.
on the planet, and
Mhm.
so they're just two separate realities right now. So America
Mhm.
is not what it thinks it is, and that's because education in large measure has failed, and religion in large measure has failed too. And we don't want to come to grips with that. We just want to keep going to church every Sunday and getting what we're getting without understanding who and what we are. Because if you don't walk out of that church knowing what your true relationship to God is, something
It
is
failed you.
definitely
It
wrong
failed you.
with that picture.
And just to add that one piece, Doc, on that, when you talk about the psychic on how we accept the system, we just don't like the position that we're in. Another indication of that, when we in this country, when we speak of regime change and that conquering spirit, we're okay with that. There's not a lot of conversation when when the talking heads come on the TV and talk about America, we regime change, and we brush over that like that's all right. I said, how is you going to change somebody else's country regime and you think it's okay, and we're not screaming bloody murder like what are you talking about? But because of this conquering nature and what we are used to, that's how we done business, is taken from somebody and things of that nature. We sit back, like you said, Doc, and we go along with it like, oh, that's just normal rhetoric and normal talk. How you gonna and you gonna go in somebody else's country, take their president out of it, and everybody, half the country is just still do. Oh well, that's what we do.
Yeah, that we're convinced that whatever we say is legitimate. But let me add to Yao's description, because we also, there's the yin and the yang of everything. There's two sides to every coin. So the other thing that we're not willing to address or question, if Yao says education has failed, we have to ask ourselves, well, what is it that's being achieved in this failure at the same time? Because this thing is allowed to continue as it is. So it suggests to us that it must be, or it might be, or it could be accomplishing something that we don't notice. So what would be the advantage of having an ignorant populace? That ignorant populace would not have the sophistication to challenge anything that we say.
That's right.
So we could get over on them almost with ease. Because if you can't tell me how many dimes are in a $1.50 or 150, then how are you going to challenge me on my description of why we have to go to Venezuela and capture and imprison their president? You can't even discern between a dime and a nickel. How are you going to have the sophistication challenge anything I say about anything?
That's right.
So we live in a social environment where the people, the average person, is not sophisticated enough in their understanding of what's going on, their definition of words, understanding what's being said. And so they come away oftentimes saying, well, that makes sense. But you don't know whether it makes sense or not. You're just saying that. Well, if it's on TV, it must be true. They wouldn't put it in the paper if it wasn't true. They wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. So you've been convinced that this apparatus is legitimate. And if you're not a critical thinker, and you don't even have to be a critical thinker to know the difference between a nickel and a dime. So it becomes very telling. And you can project what is the likelihood that this individual will get a job? Very low. So what are they going to do if they can't get a job? They're likely to commit crimes. And what's going to happen when they commit crimes? The police are going to arrest them. They're going to go to court. They're going to be adjudicated guilty. They're going to serve time. Then we will use their talents in prison. So someone that has enough comprehensive thinking can see how these things that appear to be disjointed are actually all interrelated.
Part of the plan. Mm-hmm.
So someone is doing things intentionally
Mm-hmm. That's right.
that not noticing, or at least we should think about it in the sense that somebody is benefiting from everything that we say we don't like. If nobody was benefiting from it, it would be
What
changed.
happened? Yeah, that's right. That's right, bro. That's right.
It's benefiting everything. And so we have critical thinking. But if you can't tell the difference between a dime and a nickel, the possibility of you being a critical thinker is very, very unlikely.
Good point. Yeah.
We have to keep questioning and keep trying to, like your show is designed to help people to begin to think more broadly and more critically, as opposed to saying, well, that's okay. Regime change, they want regime change. Well, that makes sense. But how does it make sense if that's a sovereign nation?
Right.
That's none of your business how they do what they do. So you don't know that. So we don't know that something's being done that's actually wrong.
I wonder about the prospect of regime change here in this country, because people are looking to the midterms and thinking, oh, well, you know, maybe we can undo some of the damage that's been done in the past 2 years. But we switch back and forth, and some say that the Democrats are better for us than the Republicans. But where are we right now? And we've had interaction with both of them, and the Democrats allowed us to see our voting rights just fly off. So what difference does it make? It really, it hasn't made a difference for us. Now, we could argue that, well, you know, in the previous president's administration, we had the Affordable Health Care Act and all those other kinds of things. But I just out of curiosity, I went to AI last week and I asked about what we got. And when I say we, I'm talking about us, what we got. And what was said was what we repeat on this station all the time. A rising tide raises all boats. That was the philosophy of that previous administration. But our boats did not rise like some others did. We're witnessing the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of this planet. And this is what has happened as a result of that tide rising. We got left out of the benefit of the rising tide. And there it is.
Yeah, I agree. The call, Doc. So what's the call, Doc? What we should be doing and how we should be doing that, because I remember you talked about the complete circle. You know this. So what do you think, Doc?
I'll go back to saying that if we were wise and we could, what we used to say growing up, if we're not wise, we can certainly wise up.
Okay.
Wise up. And we have to start looking very objectively at the global activities and our local activities, not in a romantic way that we would just like things to be right, but just look as objectively as we can to see what is it that's going on. Not taking any sides, just evaluate what is going on and how is it likely to impact me and us. That's what we need to be doing. And we can't get to that by simply tuning into the local news or keeping tabs on what the White House is saying. We have to explore what other people are saying that might not be popular, so that we have enough information to make an informed decision for us. But I would say one of the things I've said, and y'all's repeated it and added to it in a appropriate way, one activity we should be engaged in, everybody should be getting a passport. If you can get multiple passports, you're even better. So that's one thing that everybody could figure out how to do that. And then I would say begin to gather as much information as you can from various sources so that you have the ingredients that you can put into some consideration that is not just you listening to the party line, or not just listening to a single voice, or not gauging your planned activities on the fact that the Speaker of the House said this, or the President said that. You have to get a variety of input so that you can see how these things might come together. And if your show is on, I would tell people to stay tuned. You're still searching for information every day, every possible way you can get it. Y'all just mentioned consulting AI is not a bad thing. These are things that are available. AI can research all the written text in different positions much quicker than you can. So it can give you some insight on things because it has the capacity to review things much faster, so that you have answers to certain things that are instantaneous, that might take you weeks and months to digest, especially if you ask good questions. It can narrow down the responses you get that will become useful to you. And don't be afraid of what it is that you might hear or conclude, because whether you hear it and conclude it, if it's true, it's going to happen anyway. You're going to learn about it at the time it takes place. So you're not going to avoid something simply because you haven't heard it. You can hear something, you say, like a weather forecast, it said it's going to be thunderstorms today. So what do? You could stay in and not go out at all, or you could take an umbrella to prepare for it, but you're not living your life because of what's projected. You still have to live, and we're supported. In our sense, we know we're supported by the fact that we know there's been at least 25, 28 generations of our people here that have dealt with things much worse than what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true.
In our conversation, we haven't discussed how we're going to avoid slave patrols. That didn't come up. We haven't discussed whether we've heard of Harriet Tubman and get in touch with her. That didn't come up.
Taking away our children.
We have about somebody taking our children. We have how much cotton did you pick yesterday? None of these things came up because our ancestors dealt with all of those things already. So we've already got a history of people that have succeeded in dealing with things much worse than what we are talking about right now. So what do we have to be afraid of? We just have to say to ourselves, we have the resolve to do what's required to be done on our watch, just like all of those generations that preceded us. And if we turn out to be wrong, so we're just wrong. But we have the confidence that whatever's happened, we're going to deal with it. We're not going to sit down and do nothing. Our ancestors never did that. So we're going to do whatever's required. I'm just suggesting we gather the information that we need so that we can make intelligent decisions about what to do. And not just listening to people that are trying to manipulate, control, and marginalize us. Why would we listen to them?
The history.
We get information that we can work with that makes sense. We discuss it amongst ourselves. We come up with a plan. We implement the plan as best we can. And as young people say, we keep it moving.
Hey, Doc, before we conclude again, what keeps coming up is education, self-identity, knowing who you are, having pride and confidence in who you are, and things like that. And that's what you're trying to do at Wings Academy. So again, let our listeners know, if I know we're at the end of a school year, you're probably having some graduations and ceremonies and that, but I don't know when you might start registration again for the upcoming year. So you give some people some info on that.
Well, we're at 2450 Prospect Avenue, and anybody can contact me with my email. If you put it out there again, ashay1ltd@gmail.com. I think y'all put it out one time before. So we'd love to discuss education with you. When it comes down to at the end of the day, it's what you know and how you can act based upon what you know, and how you can gain the insights of what you don't know. And I'll leave you with the phrase that's become part of your opening that John Henry Clark said: what do people do for themselves depends upon what they think about themselves. Al said, our school is designed to help our urban youth to have a healthy, positive, encouraging description of themselves, based on the fact that if you think you are valuable, you'll treat yourself with more care. If you think you're valuable, you'll treat yourself with more caution. If you think you're valuable, you'll treat yourself with more sincerity about what you would like to be doing tomorrow and tomorrow. So it's all about, at the end of the day, is what you know about yourself and what you believe to be your destiny.
Doc, one more thing I'm gonna ask from you. You kind of inspired me again, because I was getting a little, retreating a little bit. And the last message, the audio message that you just sent out to us the other day, and towards the end of that message, you talked about your pledge from your mother. And
you want me to discuss it, share it here?
Yeah. Share what's been motivating you, inspiring you to do your pledge.
My mother died in 1992, and after her passing, she had cancer, and it came back, and she transitioned in 1992, right around Thanksgiving, I believe. And I wrote about this in my book, Why I Became an African Chief. So if anybody wants it, they can send me their email and I'll send them an electronic copy. But after she passed, she was on life support for several weeks. And my father, my brother, and I, it was my suggestion that we terminate the life support because in my mind, she was gone already. So we agreed to do that. But as soon as that was done, I had misgivings about the fact that perhaps there could have been a cure that day. And I just no longer wanted to go back and forth to the hospital. So I decided that for my personal convenience. I just didn't want to do it anymore. So it started to bother me that maybe I was self-centered and premature, and it was my fault. So I went back to my office, and I sat in my office just kind of thinking, and a voice came to me and said, "What have you done of significance?" And I responded out loud that I've gone to the various schools, I got degrees, I'm an accomplished person, and blah, 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 blah. So the voice asked me a second time, "But what have you done of significance?" And I could not think of anything else. And I drove around for maybe 2 weeks, haunted by the fact that everything that I had done in my life that I thought was significant didn't seem to be significant when it came to that question. And it dawned on me that one thing I've never tried to do, now this was 1992, one thing I've never tried to do, I've never committed myself to doing, was the upliftment of African people. I never thought about that. I never tried that, but I was going to devote the rest of my life to accomplishing that goal. And even if I didn't, I think it would be something that I could say was something I had done of significance the next time I get that question. So yesterday I sent out a tape, I think it was yesterday or the day before, audio.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the context of Thomas Edison's incandescent light bulb that revolved around a cryptocurrency process that had failed to produce what we were thinking. And I mentioned that Edison had made 500 attempts to produce a light bulb and had not been successful. And a reporter asked him, didn't he think that all that failure should be enough to convince him that he couldn't do this light bulb? So Edison's response to him was that this reporter misunderstood the nature of his work. And he said, "I have not failed to produce the light bulb. I have successfully identified 500 ways that won't work." So in my mind, I was saying to our team of people that this is my third attempt to uplift African people using cryptocurrency. And none of them have achieved what I wanted, but in the context of Edison, I've got 497 other attempts to try. And I will keep trying to do this because that's what I pledged to do. That's what I intend to do. And God willing, and the ancestors support it, I'm going to do until my last breath. And so whether it's the present administration or the blockade at the Strait of Hormuz, or it's a lack of education or whatever it is, I'm going to keep trying to do that until I cannot take another step. And so that's my message to partners. That's my message to every person that's listening to this. You came to this dimension to do something that is valuable and important. And I don't care what the circumstances appear to be, that is still your mission. So stay on your mission, get it done. And we've got at least 25 generations of people that have come before us that have made it possible for us to sit here for a couple of hours and talk about something, because nobody's chasing us. We're not being lynched. We've got challenges just like our people have always had. But we're going to meet those challenges just like all the people that have come before us. And all we have to do is maintain the resolve, get the information we can, do our best. And at the end of the day, that's all we can do. So that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to thank you for all that you have done, because you have done a lot. And I can tell by what you just shared with us that you intend to do more. I would also say that, yes, we have tried things and some things have not worked, but we also have knowledge, awareness, and information that will enable us to succeed. And so all we have to do is plug into the correct information and use the right resources to achieve those things. And it can and it will be done.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that's
I agree.
my 2 cents. Anything you want to add, Brother Lamb?
No, I think that Doc spoke well about it, because we can feel, and falter to, and not rise up to the occasion, but can we afford not to at this juncture? And I'm just putting out a plea to urgency, y'all. Don't let all these insignificant things get in the way and cloud your vision on what's going on. Somebody had to tell me that the Cavs was in the playoff. I wasn't paying any attention to none of that. I didn't know nothing about it. Like, huh? What's happening? Because I know that is a smokescreen deterrent from what's going on. We got so many things that is going over all over the globe, and I'm gonna be worried about the Cavs and putting a lot of energy if we're gonna stay in the playoffs or not. I didn't even know what was going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have to stay vigilant and keep our eyes on the price, because, like you just said, Doc, all this is going on now, but we saying the sky's falling, and they around there, showing that there ain't nothing going on, everything is all right, until soldiers or anything happen. They be marching, bringing tanks down the street before some of us wake up and realize that we're in trouble.
To your point, brother, folks are saying that the sky is falling and everybody looking at the ground.
Yeah.
By the way, it was Game 7 yesterday. So how did it turn out?
I can't even tell you. I can't even tell you, brother. They went to another Game 7 or something.
Yeah, it was going to be Game 7. I didn't pay attention to it either.
Yeah. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Neither do I.
Now that's a testament to what we're saying, because there was a time that all three of us would be keenly aware of what's going on in the sports arena. Now the fact that there was a Game 7 yesterday and our hometown club was in it and we don't know, tells us that we're focusing on different things.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We differentiated between what's essential and what's non-essential. And I listened to about 5 or 6 different reports, updates on what's going on globally yesterday.
Right.
So there was a Game 7 that was being played yet until last night. And I don't know what happened in the Game 7 either, but whatever did happen, it doesn't change our circumstance at all.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's why, to me, it's so unimportant. One other thing before we go, you may or may not know that I'm on a list of journalists that review movies. And I saw a movie on Tuesday called Is God Is. Vivica Fox is God in this film.
What? Okay.
She's laying on her deathbed. She has 2 twin daughters, and she shares with her twin daughters that she wants them to do their daddy in. Now, the backstory is that their father put their mother in a bathtub, doused her with liquid, and set her on fire. These daughters were taken away and did not know that their mother lived. So some 20-some years later, they find out that their mother is still alive. They go visit their mother, and their mother says, "Look at what he did to me." They come to the conclusion that she made us, so she's God. And what God wants is revenge against the father. Now, we have conversations about God being a Black woman. And so the world wakes up to this idea of God being a Black woman. But what they learn about God being a Black woman is that her mission is revenge against the Black man. People are hooping and hollering about how good this movie is, about the symbolism, about the
Mhm,
casting,
mhm.
all these other kinds of things. But the message in that, from my perspective, this is just my opinion, but the message is that the role of the black woman as God is to exact revenge on the black man. And the man that was to be killed, guess what his name was? Man. That was the name of that character, Man. You can't break it down any simpler than that. We don't look at those things critically or analytically. We talk about the entertainment value of that film. And I know I'm probably standing on an island with this opinion, but I just wanted to point that out so that if you watch this film, watch it with a critical, analytical eye and reach your own conclusions. Because I can't tell you what to think about this film, but I can tell you what I think about it. And I think it was a disservice to black people, but that's my opinion.
I haven't heard of it, but I would say I would like to find out who were the producers of the film, and I would let them know what is part of the desired utilitarian value of the film.
Well, I will tell you that the writer and the director was a sister.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I ain't gonna tell you who produced it, but I'm gonna tell you that we played a part in creating this product and putting it out there for the world to see. So it's gonna be on Amazon. If you ever want to see it, I'll warn you in advance that there is violence because these two twin daughters go on a killing spree. Okay. So
okay.
So if you want to see that, you know, but
man, the power of imagery, Doc, and you being a psychologist, the power of imagery, boy. If we don't take a hold of this thing right here, man, boy.
I wrote a review of the film on my Facebook page, so if you're interested, you can see it. But the thing that I invoked was Amenorhanes, that sister who took Caesar's head and put it under the stairs so that when people entered the building, they could walk over him. And that was a sister. And she was exacting revenge in a proper way. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say.
This kind of goes to my earlier suggestion that we can see how much we think like the people that
yeah.
Well, that's
indoctrination is a mother.
Yeah. The film is so deep. I can't even begin to tell you all that it was about, but it left a lot to think about. So if you watch the film, just look at it with a critical and analytical eye, and you can celebrate the craftswomanship if you want. But the message to me was clear. You know, revenge is revenge. And my final statement was revenge is not godly.
Right.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes.
I can get with you on that.
And on that note,
yes. Okay.
On that note, any final words, Nana?
Well, I'm just thankful that we've had another opportunity to chat and maybe share some insights with our people and give them some things to think about, explore, evaluate, and figure out how they can use or discard based upon how it's helped them to make some informed decisions about their life so that they can complete the mission that they came here to complete. And if we help that in any way, I think it's fabulous. And I'm just happy to have the opportunity to participate once again in the joint enterprise of trying to help our people see how to go, how to move, how to think, and how to look out for themselves.
All right.
Right on. All I would say is that I appreciate you brother Whitaker, and just by having somebody with some boots on the ground that is interfacing and interacting with our people gives us more information and give us more of that information that you're talking about to make those informed decisions and to rediscover who we were and what we once were at one time. So that's, I
Yes.
appreciate that, you know.
To remember who we are.
Yes.
Well, with that, as always in parting, know yourself. Know thyself, if you want to put it in those terms. Know yourself, love yourself, and be yourself. And do the best that you can to have a great day. Peace, everyone.
Peace. Peace again.
Hey, Manasseh.